Hi, everybody. I'm going to give everybody a moment to get in here and get started. Uh, really excited about today. And before I get into it, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Courtney Baker, the CMO here at Knownwell. Thanks again for joining us for Breaking the Growth Barrier. AI-driven strategies for scaling professional service firms. You're in the right place, and we are really excited for today's session. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to enter them in the chat, and we'll get to as many of those as we have time for at the end. We'll also be following up with this recording and a link to the slides in the coming days, so no need to feel the pressure of taking all those notes because I know there's going to be so many good things, or taking screenshots unless you want to, of course. Before introducing David and Pete and handing it off to them, let me give you a quick overview of what to expect today. We're about to share the unique challenges facing you as a leader of a professional services firm. The main reason we're here today is to talk about how AI can help you overcome some of those challenges. The good news is that it's not all doom and gloom, even if you've been unnerved by all the recent headlines and AI agents taking over. At the end of this session, you'll have several actionable strategies you can deploy in your organization to scale your firm and break through growth barriers you've encountered in the past. If you don't know David DeWolf and Pete Buer, you are in for a real treat. David DeWolf is Knownwell's founder and CEO. He has a track record in scaling and transforming businesses. Prior to Knownwell, he spent 16 years as the driving force behind Three Pillar Global, a digital product development company. Under his leadership, Three Pillar grew year after year, earning a coveted spot on the Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest growing private companies 10 times. David twice led Three Pillar through successful private equity sales, showcasing his ability to navigate high stakes transitions while maintaining growth momentum. Also joining us today is Pete Buer. Pete began his career at CEB, now Gartner, where he held key executive committee roles, including running the sales and marketing business line, head of HR, and chief culture officer. Pete spent nearly 30 years at CEB and helped scale the company to more than $1 billion before its acquisition by Gartner in 2017. Following his time at CEB, Pete served as Chief of People and Operations at Three Pillar Global, Chief Growth Officer at Brightfield, and Chief Strategy Officer at Knownwell. He also serves CEOs and leadership teams as a consultant and coach, with a particular focus on business transformation. David, Pete, I've asked you this before. I need y'all to calm down on the don't accomplish anything else. Let the rest of us catch up here. So many amazing things. Really looking forward to what you have to say today. I will say goodbye for now, and I will jump in on the end of this conversation to wrap things up. Pete, David, over to you.
Thank you, Courtney.
Thanks so much, Courtney. Hey, Pete, I don't know about you, but I like hanging out with Courtney because she always picks the
Back.
best things of my bio and puts them forward. You know, what you know as well as I do is that when you're running a services business, you're not actually focused on those things she just talked about. What you're focused on is the big questions of, do you know where your next 10 million are coming from? Do you know where that 20 million, even that next 200 million is coming from? When I started Three Pillar back in 2006, those questions would have sounded nuts to me. I was focused on the next $500,000 contract, the next $1 million contract, maybe. But as we scaled past 50, past 100, past $150 million and beyond, those became very real questions. The questions of scale really started to be the forefront of mind that you go to bed thinking about every single night. And as we hit certain milestones, those challenges that we faced as leaders and as an organization changed. Personally, I remember having to reinvent myself about every 18 months just to remain the leader the company needed. As your company grows and evolves, so do the challenges and what it takes to overcome them. Reaching those different milestones of 50, 100, 150 and more in revenue is a remarkable achievement for anybody. No doubt about it. But scaling to get past those points gets exponentially harder as you move higher and higher up that revenue curve. As growth accelerates, firms typically face growing pains that they can't solve by continuing to do what they have always done. You know this as much as, if not better than anybody. Um, as your organization grows, Pete, you will face challenges that are new to you. You're going to go head to head with market leaders, not just startups. You're competing not just for clients, but you're competing for talent as well. High touch relationships that when you were a small boutique and were relationship driven, that relationship nature of your sales was enough. Well, now it's not enough anymore. And it becomes harder and harder to scale. There's just so much to overcome to reach successive revenue barriers. But I can tell you, despite this challenge, it's possible. And that's why I'm so excited to be here and to share these AI powered strategies. Pete, you've lived this in your journey at CEB from low double digit revenues right around to about $1 billion at the time of the Gartner acquisition. Tell us more about your experience. What did you learn from going through that similar journey?
Thank you, David. Yeah, I look back on the time and the run that we all went through together. My memory's a little bit fuzzy, a little hazy. It's kind of like the morning after your 21st birthday party. We had maintained reasonably high double-digit growth actually for quite a time, 30 to 40 percent across a number of years, and it felt like we were stretching the physics of work on
Hmm.
every dimension. More custom research this year than we did last year, more advisory engagements, more sales and more salespeople. Oh, and by the way, more research people and more advisory people, new product lines, and then more new product lines, new geographies. Had to figure out how to do acquisitions. We kept pushing harder and harder, and it always felt like we were redlining, ready to blow the engine. I remember sharing that feeling with a good investor friend of mine at the time who made the astute observation several times that trees just don't grow to the sky. And that's the feeling, right? Like there's something physical, something existential always getting in your way as you're trying to grow a professional services business.
Hmm. Yeah, Pete, we tend to agree on a lot of things. But I think based on these two journeys, we can both say pretty confidently that we are perfectly aligned on this, right? B2B services growth is flat out hard, especially once you get past that 100 million, 250 million, $500 million barriers, right? Those are just really, really hard points to scale. The law of large numbers just kind of catches up to you, and those physics you talk about tend to start weighing you down more and more, and you feel the pressure of them.
Exactly. And speaking of numbers, I'd like to share a little market evidence to substantiate this storytelling that we've been doing here. So, a little data that we pulled together with the help of AI, apropos to the situation, distribution of services firms, uh, 0 to 5 in revenue over on the left hand side, working your way across to the right to the 250 plus over on at the right hand end. The small companies, 0 to 5, make up the lion's share of the market, 65%. Slowly but surely, as you keep moving right, the numbers drop kind of precipitously. You're already in low single digit percentages at the 50 to 100 million mark, after which you kind of fall off a cliff. We couldn't even make the graphing program actually work for the slide. Once we got to 250 plus, we had to drop in a long skinny rectangle to show just how small the population is at the top end. Um, Fun fact, there is no single source for this data across sectors. So Chat GPT and I, in a glass of wine, had some fun extrapolating from a number of different data sets. I was the human in the loop, so I feel good about the results that we cranked out. And even if we're off by just a little bit, it's fair to say it is indeed lonely at the top. So let's talk about why that's the case. Reflecting on our experience together, David, at building professional services companies, pulled together some math, some representative math, shall we say, behind what's so hard about growth. First part of the equation, as we have on the slide, specialized talent. Think about the traditional profile of your most trusted hands players on the team. Superwomen, supermen who have to be good at everything. Deep expertise, great communicators, great problem solvers, rainmakers, you name it. In the world of unicorns, these are the gold plated kind. Costly to find, costly to acquire, costly to keep, costly to support, costly, costly, costly. Part two of the equation, then, bespoke delivery. You hear it all the time from your teams, right? Every customer is different. Every implementation is unique. Tons of operational complexity with each new instance and endless personalities to deal with all across the customer organization. And all that bespoke complexity intensifies with growth. New business lines bring new teams and processes. New markets bring new regulations and HR practices. And all of it adds up to more and more layers of overhead and operating expense. So A plus B then equals C. Here's the result, visually portrayed. Our take on the revenue productivity of the services business model. Costs on the x-axis, revenue on the y. The punchline is that relationships are relatively linear. So for every increment of revenue you'd like to acquire, there's an additional increment of cost you have to field to get that revenue. There's just not a ton of leverage in the traditional model. But that's the traditional view. Now, of course, times are changing. Let's talk for a second about this notion of bending that curve. We'll start with the same graphic over on the left-hand side, the direct relationship between the two. But our job as leaders, with our commitments to stakeholders and the team, is to find a way to make that curves of our business look more like this. For every dollar of cost, I don't want one more dollar of revenue. I want 10 or 20 or 100 or 1,000. And I want a business model that continues to expand over time, continuously scaling revenues and getting more efficient with costs. And that's possible today in a way that it hasn't been in the past. As we'll explore across the rest of this session, AI gives us the ability to bend the curve, tightening the denominator with automating time-intensive, capacity-consuming rote work, and now increasingly and importantly, augmenting and automating even the stretchiest knowledge work. And then expanding the numerator as well, creating new value for customers and providing intelligence to the team to help them see around commercial corners and make hay with new and existing customers. Our view and premise for this conversation is that properly deployed AI can change the game in professional services.
Pete, I love how you broke that down. It's the old adage that folks say, services are unscalable. And I think you just broke down and explained to us really why. And that background and the historical challenges of scaling services companies is so helpful for framing the conversation. And it feels so familiar because it's something that you and I have both lived firsthand. I know that when I was running 3Pillar, I look back, if I had AI at my disposal during that period of time, wow, unbelievable what we could have accomplished and how that would have taken us even further. It would have helped make so many of our processes more repeatable, reduced our reliance on those gold-plated unicorns, right? We literally used to talk about hiring unicorns, right? And how hard they were to find. Another big opportunity that we'll touch on in this next section is that AI can help you to elevate your commercial management discipline too. And we all spend so much time with sales management and rigor and discipline pre-sales. Well, post-sales, managing the commercial relationships that you have, it simply wasn't possible to do with the same data and rigor and discipline just a few years ago. But now we can with AI. the bottom line is that throughout the client lifecycle, we are seeing a lot more opportunities for AI to be deployed and used. This is coming not only in service of the client and in doing the day-to-day work, but also in uncovering opportunities for growth within these clients and ensuring that you're expanding these commercial relationships with those clients you work so hard to win in the first place. We're going to focus on two primary strategies that really push into these. These are reflective of the advances that we're seeing in the market. Strategy one looks at automating client interactions and evaluating your workflows to see where AI can be applied to drive this efficiency and these touch points. Strategy two is focused on new ways that you can leverage AI to elevate, not just optimize, but elevate that commercial management, take it to the next level, enabling you to bolster revenue growth and improve your client retention and ultimately your net revenue retention. As you'll see as we go through these next slides, the idea is to make your business more efficient while also tapping into AI to help drive more profitable growth. Ultimately, Pete, that's how you deliver on bending that curve that you were talking to. It's about that bottom line.
Cool. Let's get into it. The first strategy, automating client interactions. I think the punchline of this section is kind of in the subtitle there, reducing cost and complexity while enabling your people to focus on higher value work. We've seen lots of high profile cases in the news, and we've profiled them on the Knownwell podcast. But companies across the board are finding ways to free up hundreds or even thousands of employees' time with AI tools and agents. And we'd like to share a few examples of how we've seen that happening out in the world. So we've arrayed across the page from left to right some of the use cases that we've come across. And it's arrayed on the client lifecycle. So over on the left-hand side, outreach and acquisition, through to the right-hand side, renewal and extension. So let's just cruise across it. First column, email automation and lead qualification in the sales process. A lot of the early innovation with AI in commercial activity was on the front end, figuring out how to make outreach more efficient. Moving right then, tutorials and onboarding to help enable post-sales activities. David, you referenced post-sale just a moment ago. In the middle then, tons of examples of chatbot service and issue handling support in the ongoing relationship management phase. To the right of it, billing and payment facilitation. And then over on the far right-hand side, supporting renewals and extensions with KPI reporting, ROI demonstration, and auto-populated pitch decks for annual review sessions and QBRs. It wasn't that long ago that this breadth of work had to be covered by dozens, or maybe even, based on the size of your portfolio, hundreds of staff members. Now there are AI-powered solutions that you can build, or in some cases, in fact, buy off the shelf to tackle this workflow, creating time savings for the team and removing friction for the customer. And best of all, done right, keeping the personal touch in services that the business is known for. So dramatically improved efficiency across an almost limitless set of opportunities. And I want to pause on that last thought of the notion of limitless possibilities, as that's as much of a challenge as it is an opportunity. The hard thing about automating client interactions and AI transformation generally, as far as the opportunities are concerned, it's not about finding them. They're everywhere. What's hard is prioritizing and sizing and making the most of the opportunities that are going to make the biggest difference. Little bit of recent history on the page to help ground this statement. If you go back just a little bit in time, the AI wave was crashing on corporate beaches across 23 and 24. And to extend the analogy, everyone was kind of playing in the surf, right? Investors were hot for their companies to come up with a plan, any plan, as long as we can report about it in the press, right? Leaders were getting up to speed, usually slowly and definitely not together. And there was not a lot of central coordination across all of the work that was going on, the education and the experimentation. And in fact, it was really a thousand flowers blooming. Um, David, you may remember this. When we were doing some of our early advisory work, we had a conversation with an executive who proudly reported to us that he had 426 AI experiments
I
underway. It
remember
was
it so
very,
well.
yeah, very much a source of pride, right?
Yeah.
Did we believe that there could be that many experiments to play around with AI? Sure. Did we believe that those were all the right ones and there wasn't going to be overlap and conflict and that they weren't expending energy at the expense of focus? Good goodness, no. Um, that was how things felt at the time. And of course, we've since learned that that's not the way to make progress with the new technology. And so you see that reflected in how the market is showing up today on the right hand side. That era of unbounded experimentation has pretty quickly given way to an environment of harshly reset expectations, to projects with measurable impact, demonstrable ROI, and a genuine link to achievement of the business plan, not just experimentation for learning's sake. And so that's our guidance in chasing this wide array of potential automation opportunities. Planfulness trumps enthusiasm. We actually built an assessment tool to help customers prioritize their transformation projects. It's on the website. Please help yourself to it, anyone who has an interest. And I've cribbed over on the right hand side of the page a couple of the key types of questions. Here are 5 from the 30 that are in the assessments. Things that you should be asking yourself as you target your opportunity development. Are our projects grounded in vision and strategy for the business? Are they aligned with where we want to go? Are we focused on addressing the biggest customer and business pain points, initiatives that are going to actually move the freaking dial? Is the leadership team on board? Are we all pulling oars together? Are we bringing our people and our culture along genuinely, deliberately in the direction we're trying to go as a firm? Again, full assessments on the website, so please help yourself. But the point we're trying to get across here is that the how of automation and transformation is in fact far more important than the what. Last thought on automating client interactions. The game gets really interesting when you move beyond transactional interactions with customers to delivery of your core value proposition, the actual service work previously delivered by your teams of experts. We use the term productization for this stretchier type of automation. The more you can do it, the better off the economics of your business become. So on the page explaining the framework, we're showing the evolution of business models from the left-hand side to the right, where that diagonal line from the bottom left to the upper right shows the proportion of service work that's being delivered by technology. So on the far left-hand side, we have traditional bespoke services where the bulk of customer value is being delivered by expert humans. Over on the far right-hand side, product platform businesses where the bulk of customer value is being delivered by technology. The phases in between then are meant to demonstrate increasing productization of services. With each step to the right, the offering is more and more resembling a technology delivered product. Now, to be clear, the objective isn't to get all the way to the right-hand side. We're not saying everyone needs to be a product or platform business, but there's just simply a lot of goodness in pushing righter, faster, wherever possible. The more productized your offering is, the more customers can self-serve, the easier it is to sell, the more predictable your revenues become, and back to our starting point, the more bendy your curve becomes. So if you check out episode 117 of the AI Know-How podcast, we profile an example of this reflected over on the right-hand side from IBM, their Enterprise Advantage offering. Over the past couple of years, IBM built an AI-powered platform for its own teams to use. It was built on data from 150 client engagements, company's proprietary data and analytics, and animated by AI tools and agents to help enable IBM teams. After proving out the value of that platform internally, they saved about 35 million in operating costs. They then packaged it up and started selling it to customers. So now clients have direct access to those same productized services, work that would previously have been done by expensive engagement teams of consultants and analysts for which you'd be paying an hourly rate. But instead, now there's a platform for you to access to do the work on your own. Pretty slick, pretty 301 level. This is a company that's got a lot of resources to deploy against such an undertaking. But I feel like the case study stands for something important, the aspiration of getting beyond automating just the interactions with customers all the way through to automating and transforming into technology delivery the core value proposition of the business. So I'll stop there, David. That's strategy one. You want to take us into strategy two?
Yeah, I'm happy to, Pete, and such good stuff. Like it's mind blowing what AI can do, and what you were just talking to was especially driving that efficiency. And I get excited about it, but I get even more excited about the growth side of things and
Yeah,
what we can do,
100%.
because there's only so many pennies that you can save. There's unlimited dollars that you can
Yes.
drive, and here is the really hard truth: most professional services firms have never built a real operating system and a real disciplined management system for growth after the deal closes, right? We all know about the RevOps revolution, the sales ops revolution, the discipline, the rigor with which we run pre-sales. But let's talk about post-sales and how they can really drive more growth in your business. The brutal reality is your existing customer base is the lifeblood of the firm. But for way too many leaders, it is also the biggest blind spot. Revenue is sitting there, the risk is sitting there, and it's largely unmanaged at scale. Now, when I say unmanaged, I'm not saying nobody's paying attention to it. There's obviously client partners, account managers, people dedicated to serving customers, and the voice of the customer has become so big. But we also know that you manage what you measure. And we know from the data that firms with strong client centric disciplines grow faster and are more profitable. Bain found that companies that excel in customer experience grow revenues 4% to 8% above others in their market. And they're best off when that's data driven and disciplined. But there's a massive gap in how we are actually managing that customer centricity. The problem isn't intent, the problem is management rigor. Look at what happened to sales and marketing through the revolution I was talking about. About a decade ago, they moved from the art of the deal to RevOps, stage gates, forecasting, systems, accountability. But once a lead becomes a client, most firms fall back into the old way of relationship management: manual status reports, red, yellow, green anecdotes, periodic NPS scores or CSAT surveys. Whether a client partner feels good about the relationship or not is what drives a lot of the reporting. What has been missing is a way to run the commercial management across the full client lifecycle with the exact same discipline that we use to win the work in the first place. That is what AI finally makes possible, Pete. The same rigor that RevOps brought to sales and marketing is finally possible for the entire client lifecycle. Thanks to AI, we can move from gut feel to commercial management. We are finally in a position to treat our existing accounts with the same data driven discipline that we use to win them in the first place. We can actually dive in and measure these nuanced relationships because the AI can actually understand the natural language that abounds in the enterprise about this. It's the exhaust, it's the communication, it's the natural information that exists that isn't necessarily transactional data, but can be queried and understood with AI. It's about turning the art of the relationship into a scalable science of growth. The big shift we're seeing is unlocking this new frontier in relationship management. So many firms we talk to have spent millions of dollars, literally millions of dollars, and years building a modern data stack. But that stack only sees structured data, invoices, logged hours, CRM stages, or maybe a bit of their managed natural data, like document repositories and those types of things. But IDC estimates that unstructured data accounts for 80 to 90% of all business data. That means that 80 to 90% is buried in dark data. The thousands, no, the millions of Slack messages, the tone of the email thread that's going back and forth, the sentiment of a meeting transcript, all things that are largely untapped. As a leader, without AI, you're forced to play the armchair psychologist that may be asking questions, probing into different elements of that, but you never get the full picture. You're trying to discern which of the three different flavors of the truth your team is giving you is the actual reality. This is where a platform like Knownwell can help you go from art to science. We connect to all those natural communications to give you commercial intelligence. We digest far more touch points than any human would ever be allowed to, that ever could. And we use it to create a Knownwell score that's updated on a daily basis. All of a sudden, you have real-time operational metrics measuring the health of your portfolio. And this moves you from a lagging mindset to a leading mindset. Instead of waiting for a churn notice or a churn threat or a massive trust break event, AI flags a decline in service quality perception weeks before the account team even realizes a client is unhappy. Instead of land and defend and reactive firefighting, where you're just trying to keep your head above water when it comes to renewal time, it identifies land and expand opportunities where you can proactively delight customers and go speak to them about real opportunities that actually exist. Remember, 80% of your growth comes from your existing clients. Knownwell ensures that while your delivery team is focused on the work, AI is focused on ensuring you have your arms around the relationship as well, spotting growth signals and expansion triggers that might otherwise go unnoticed. It's about maintaining that boutique level of personalization, but doing it with the efficiency of a global scale player. Let's talk about what goes into an elevated approach to commercial management. When we started Knownwell, we did hundreds of research interviews with professional services leaders. What we found was that growth isn't really a mystery. It's a byproduct of three very specific levers. If you have alignment in these three areas, the relationship expands. If one is missing, it crumbles. The first is relationship strength. This is the depth of interpersonal ties throughout the entire B2B relationship. It's not just the CEO to CEO relationship. It's not just about the health of the connections that exist in buyer consortiums. It's about the connections across the entire organization. Yes, at the executive level, but also in middle management and at the project level. AI helps us to map the web, the fabric of, if you will, of these connections to see if we are single-threaded or deeply integrated. The second big driver is service quality perception. Here is the hard truth that a lot of services leaders don't like to hear. It doesn't matter how good you think your work is, even if you think that you can objectively measure it. It only matters how the client actually perceives it and receives it. Often, there is a perception gap between your delivery metrics and their satisfaction. AI can catch those subtle shifts in tone, in sentiment, the different topics that are being discussed, and signal that disconnect long before it shows up in a survey or any one of your internal facing quality metrics. Finally, commercial alignment. This is the one that most firms get wrong. It's the degree to which the work you're doing and the client's strategic goals actually overlap. It's about being in the room for the next conversation, not just the current S&W that you're executing on. AI monitors the client's public signals, earnings calls, news, press releases, etc., to ensure that you are proposing, advising, and doing work that matches where your customer is actually going. Without alignment in these three areas, your land and expand strategy is land and hope. When you align all three of these, all of which, by the way, are really hard to measure in traditional ways, you create an environment where the client just can't imagine scaling without you. So, what does it actually look like in practice? Because data is useless if it's just sitting in a dashboard. The goal here is to move from silos of information to a single source of truth. In most firms today, data is fragmented. We hear about this all the time. Sales teams are living in Salesforce. Delivery teams may be in Jira. And your account managers, they're in Slack or email, and frankly, nobody has a single picture. They're grappling to try to understand what's going on. And in our research, the average account manager may spend 2 to 3 hours a day just trying to come up to speed. What we are talking about is a total operating system for growth. It's not just a software tool, it's a rhythm that drives your business. It provides a unified view. The source of truth is available to the whole team. When everyone sees the same Knownwell score, you eliminate the he said, she said during internal reviews and discussions. There are prescriptive insights. Instead of walking into a meeting and asking, how is the account doing? The platform tells you the account is at risk because relationship strength at this specific level in the organization has dropped by 20% this month. And there's actionable accountability. The system feeds into a series of prescriptive meetings, QBRs, portfolio reviews, weekly check-ins, all designed to ensure that everyone knows exactly who's on the hook for what, what's going on, and what is expected to drive behavior change. This is how you turn a gut feeling about a client into a repeatable, scalable process. It's taking the art of account management and giving it a science that helps it become a high-performing engine. To make this even more real, let's look at how this changes a typical day for your team. Let's look at this through the lens of a COO. Your biggest headache as the chief operating officer isn't just one client call. It's the invisible risk across the entire operation. Historically, as a COO, if you wanted to know the truth about an account, you had to rely on hero mode. You'd call that rockstar client partner. You'd wait for them to manually cull through emails, Slack, or an old QBR deck and hope that their red, yellow, green status wasn't just a gut feeling that they scribbled down 5 minutes before the meeting, but was actually thoughtful and representative of reality. With Knownwell, the COO moves from detective work to governance. Imagine you're prepping for a high-stakes account review. Instead of hours of forensic research, she opens up Knownwell and sees a real-time objective audit of the account's vitals. There's operational transparency. She sees exactly where the perception gap is widening before it hits the P&L. There's standardization. She no longer has to wonder if different partners are measuring the health in different ways. The AI applies the same rigorous Knownwell score methodology across every single account, regardless of who is running it. And there's efficiency. What used to take the account team hours to prep for now takes just a few minutes to review. For a COO, this isn't just a check-in tool. It's an early warning system that ensures the business stays predictable even as it scales. It replaces the manual hunt for data with automated delivery in truth. Imagine now that you're a client services head preparing for a portfolio review. Now, let's zoom out. If the previous slide was about gaining faster, deeper, more accurate insights into one account, this one is about doing the same thing across the entire portfolio. This is where the growth barrier is truly broken. For a head of client services or a COO, a monthly portfolio review used to be this grueling line by line autopsy of the past 30 days. We all remember that quarterly QBR, that monthly review. You were essentially looking in the rearview mirror, trying to steer the ship without knowing what was coming ahead. Because Knownwell has already done the heavy lifting of digesting everything that's happened and connecting the dots and meeting with the entire firm, your portfolio review changes. And here's specifically how. You can focus on the outliers. It's very clear. Instead of spending 10 minutes on every single account in this monthly meeting, the AI bubbles up that 5% that needs your immediate attention. Maybe because they're at risk or maybe because they're high growth. You can spot the growth patterns. You can see the patterns. They emerge. You can see which teams are consistently high in commercial alignment. And you can replicate that secret sauce across the rest of your organization. And you can enhance revenue protection. You can sort your entire portfolio by revenue at risk instead of greasing the squeakiest wheel that happens to have that loudest account manager banging on their desk demanding resources. We're taking that manual quagmire off your team's plate. Instead of fighting for data, you're finally using that data to drive the strategy that Pete, you had mentioned earlier. You're bending that curve and moving from land and defend to a high velocity land and expand machine. So let's bring it all full circle. We've talked about 2 strategies for scaling professional services. To wrap it up, here's what we've covered. First, we talked about automating client interactions, finding the places where AI can take over rote work or even advanced knowledge work so that your people can stay focused on doing that which is uniquely human. Second, we looked at elevating commercial management, moving away from land and defend and towards a high visibility AI-powered operating system that predicts risks and spots expansion opportunities earlier than you ever could have before now. At Knownwell, we believe the firms that will win this next decade won't just be the ones with the best experts, they'll be the ones with the best intelligence. We are building the first true enterprise application that turns your firm's unstructured dark data into one of your greatest competitive advantages. Courtney, with that, is there anything else you think we should touch on before we wrap up?
Well, I gotta say, such a great session. I work with you 2 all the time, and I still feel like I learn something new every time. So thank you so much for today's session. It is, what it reminds me of, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. It's almost like sometimes we don't realize what we've been using or doing. I think of the red, yellow, green. We don't realize it's actually broken or that it could be better. And so I'm curious from you 2, are there ways for leaders to just like start examining, the normal day-to-day business where we get so used to it that it's hard to pull out and say, oh, this is actually not good. So any advice for us on that?
I think, Courtney, what you're talking about is really challenging the status quo, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard to do when you're in running the business. The example you brought up is the one that's just mind-blowing to me. In our customer research, we have found that over 90% of firms still use that red, yellow, green on a spreadsheet. Here we are talking about introducing AI to really measure your commercial health signals. We haven't even sassified that, right? Very few firms are actually out of a spreadsheet, never mind out of the anecdotes of gut feel, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just a great example. And so as leaders, especially because we've had such a big step forward with AI, being able to step back and give yourself the space to really look at, what am I doing that doesn't make sense? Because for 16 years, I ran a scaling professional services firm on red, yellow, green on a spreadsheet and
Mhm.
never actually questioned it till I was out of the business and was able to say, oh my gosh, what are we doing, and figure that out, because I looked at the pain point and said, how can I solve this in a different way? And I would just challenge leaders to take that step back and give themselves permission to challenge that status quo, even if it's the way the entire industry is working.
Mhm.
And there are structured ways we can get leaders and hypos in the business to do that work of stepping back and asking themselves how sane or insane is the current approach. There's a fun leadership development exercise that we've done over the years at different businesses, where you assign the team with the task of writing a post-mortem on the business for why it failed and why the wheels came off the cart, right? Like, get 10 smart people together and give them a little bit of space in their day to day to examine how you do work now, and give them the job of finding the fail points. Send them out into the market to look at what competitors are doing. Give them the assignment to see what new technologies are out there. And they will come back and surprise you with how differently they're able to think about what is otherwise the day to day that we don't lift our heads up from, um, in the spirit of finding new paths forward.
Yeah, such great advice. Well, I hope for everybody watching, what I hope came through today is this: breaking the growth barrier is not about working harder, finding those magical unicorns, or squeezing 1% more utilization out of your team. It's really, again, about stepping back and changing the system you use to run your business. As I mentioned in the intro, we'll be following up with a recording of this session and the slides we covered today. If you'd like to follow up with David or Pete, ask any questions, you can find both of them on LinkedIn. They're more than happy to answer any follow-up questions you may have, or just connect with them to hear more of their perspectives. Last but not least, we believe the best way to experience some of AI is to see your own data, see your own business applied to this technology, or this technology applied to your business. So if you're interested in experiencing some of the things we talked about today, we would love to invite you to see your data on the Knownwell platform. You can do that by going to knownwell.com, or if you're here live, you can schedule directly from the link that we're posting in the comments. David, Pete, thanks so much for leading us through this session, and thanks to everybody who joined it.
Thank you,
Thanks
I,
for hosting
Courtney.
us, Courtney. See you, Pete.
You, David.